much to talk about tonight. Iran has a new secret weapon. Trump finds a way to make Canadians angry. And Olive Garden is now the world's most secure place to eat. Sorry, Rainforest Cafe at Rikers. So let's get into the headlines. This weekend was the big World Cup final, and I'd like to congratulate Spain, or España, as we called it during my semester overseas. It marks the end of a wonderful month of soccer co-hosted by the United States, Canada, and Mexico. And in a beautiful moment of unity, Trump watched the game alongside the leader of Canada, ushering in a new era of friendship that will last and last and last.
Breaking news, the Trump administration says it is slapping an additional 50% tariff on certain Canadian goods.
Oh, motherfucker! Fighting again with Canada? I thought we were going to work this out. Okay, now what are we taxing ourselves to punish Canada for?
Everything from Canadian wood and paper and furniture to things like hockey sticks and dairy products.
No hockey sticks? What's my husband going to keep jammed in the corner of the garage for the past 15 years? Now, obviously, it's very frustrating to be back in this trade war again, but if you're worried that this is another case of Trump abusing his power, relax. These tariffs are legal under the Smoot-Hawley Act, which has been around since 1930 when it helped prolong and worsen the Great Depression. So, cheer up. This sudden anger with Canada coming from? What's this all about?
President Trump is blasting Canada for, quote, willful negligence in its forest management, calling the pollution an unhealthy invasion. Trump went on to threaten Canada with more tariffs due to the wildfire smoke.
You got to stop these fires from coming in and, poisoning our air.
Are you sure you want America to set a precedent for paying for pollution? I feel like your pals at Pesticide, Microplastic, Death, Diarrhea, Lettuce, Inc. might have other ideas. I will say the one interesting thing about the wildfires was seeing Trump almost come to a realization.
We got to stop the fires up there. I've never remembered this happening. Over the last 4 or 5 years, you saw it starting to take place.
Go on. You're getting warmer, catastrophically warmer. I love how he's discovering climate change while standing next to his idling jet. Something is causing this, and we have got to get to the bottom of it. Keep the engine running, guys, all of them. I haven't decided which plane I'm taking. But let's move on from Trump's war on Canada to his war on personally losing elections. Look, I know a lot of liberals out there think election fraud isn't a problem, but I assure you it's just as much a threat to the United States as Canada. And that's why last week, Trump gave a primetime address from the White House to offer his solution to fix our elections.
Congress must pass the Save America Act. This landmark bill requires that all voters must show photo, voter ID. How simple is that? Could I have your photo, please? Photo, voter ID.
Even he sounds exhausted by his own election bullshit. Hey, once you turn 80, it is harder to maintain an insurrection. Happens to a lot of guys. Now, if you didn't watch this speech, Trump unveiled a devastating set of documents that conclusively prove the 2020 election was stolen in a deep state conspiracy. I'm just with you. He released a bunch of documents that were old news and didn't prove jack shit, and at one point, he even started to glitch.
In light of the brand new and irrefutable information I have revealed tonight, my administration is in the process of notifying the states.
It's what I'm always saying. You got to trust the process. Trust it. Now, normally after Trump gives a speech, all his fans at Fox News amplify his message and repeat his lies verbatim. There's just one problem. Trump's talking about election fraud. Remember how this went the last time?
Fox agreeing to pay Dominion more than $787 million over the network's unsupported claims that the 2020 presidential election was rigged.
Fox does not want to pay another $787 million. They need that money for settling sexual harassment lawsuits. Sean Hannity, you're live after Trump's speech. Let's see you try to cover this story without tripping over $787 million.
President Donald J. Trump from the East Room at the White House. He had a lot to say tonight. Now, the president, if you go to whitehouse.gov, has now releasing what he believes is all the corroboration that you would ever need. What is pretty remarkable, what he says are in these documents. I'm sure that anybody that cares about truth will want to do a deep dive into all of this.
Well, what he said was, so it was a little, you know what, let's move on to a bigger story. Why does Mom Donnie want to convert Jimothy the raccoon to Islam? So now MAGA Republicans are in a tough spot. If Trump's speech didn't move the needle, they need to find another way to rally support for it. They need to come with irrefutable evidence that is necessary. They need to take this seriously.
24 states already require photo ID to be presented prior to voting. Heck, you even need to present a photo ID to utilize the Olive Garden's never-ending pasta pass.
Okay, or we could compare our election system to Olive Garden. Sure, let's try that. And by the way, for those of you who don't know, the Olive Garden never-ending pasta pass is a real thing. And of course, you have to show a photo ID to use it. In fact, my first fake ID was actually a never-ending pasta pass. I'll never forget freshman year when I got marinara poisoning. Had to get my stomach pumped. Before you ask, yes, I checked the box to be a pasta donor. That way, God forbid, if something happens to me, a guy who needs a new kidney gets my pasta. But yeah, Virginia Fox is saying Olive Garden has tighter security than the voting booth. And that's such a ridiculous analogy that everyone on the right is using it.
So you need an ID to get all-you-can-eat pasta at Olive Garden. You want to go vote?
For God's sake, you can't go get pasta at Olive Garden without a picture ID.
So you need one for Olive Garden, but not for a steak in our republic, right?
You have to show up with a photo ID to prove it's actually you to eat their pasta. My goodness.
The fact that eating pasta requires an actual ID before voting in this country is pretty ridiculous.
Shout out to Olive Garden.
Shout out to Olive Garden? You're not even talking about election fraud anymore. You're just ordering lunch. Here's the thing. Olive Garden and elections are completely different things. Voting is a sacred right that can't be restricted just because Donald Trump wants photo ID. But Olive Garden needs a photo ID for their pasta pass because their mail-in pasta was a total mess. Not falling for that again. But beyond that, your analogy is taking over your argument. You want people to be thinking about election fraud, not the restaurant where your parents tell you that they're getting a divorce. When you're here, you're family. But when we get home, you have to choose. Please, just stop making this about Olive Garden.
Maybe we just need to change the name of the bill to the Olive Garden law.
You know what? It. Fine. Let's pass the Olive Garden law, followed by the Red Lobster War on Greenland Act and the Chili's baby back abortion ban. So that is the current state of Trump's war on voting rights. In the span of a week, he went from an urgent primetime address to watching his base obsess over a Tuscan-themed casual dining chain. It didn't work out for him this time, but the next one might, because at the end of the day, his lies are like spaghetti. Throw it at the wall and hope it sticks. And I think I speak... And I think I speak for all of us when I say, shout out to Olive Garden.